for them to engage in sex. Can this really be the case? We decided to pay a visit to the Institute and question them about this and some other information on their website.
Even if it's 2 minutes, the opinion...
No, I really can't. No,
can you answer one question for us, sir?
Needless to say, our initial attempts were met with resistance.
Can we get just one answer? On your website, which you make public, you state that you help those who are disadvantaged because they're aged sexually. Does that add up to endorsing pedophilia?
We do not endorse anything of that.
I would strongly recommend that you turn the camera off and leave right now. This is private property. Get out.
Despite what appears to have been a denial, the Institute's website declares it is the sexual right of all people to engage in sexual acts or activities of any kind whatsoever, and that people have the right to sexual entertainment, including sexually explicit materials dealing with the full range of sexual behavior. If taken literally, these so-called rights would obviously include pedophilia and child pornography. Beyond all this, the Institute's founding director, Wardell Pomeroy, wrote the book Boys and Sex, in which he promoted the idea of boys having sex with animals, such as a dog, a horse, or a bull. Pomeroy also stated that incest between adults and younger children can prove to be a satisfying and enriching experience. But the influence of Pomeroy's Sex Institute goes even beyond the academic community and into America's churches.
The line from Kinsey to the current destruction of the Catholic Church is very direct.
In the past 4 years, more than 180 people have come forward claiming they were sexually abused by priests in this area over the past 60 years.
Consider this raw data. A survey commissioned by the U.S. Catholic Church found more than 10,000 allegations of sexual abuse involving more than 4,300 priests and deacons.
The harm done to trusting families is immeasurable and was perhaps most powerfully captured by filmmaker Amy Berg in Deliver Us from Evil, a documentary about a child-molesting priest and the anguish he brought to countless children and their parents.
I feel betrayed by the church. The church has betrayed me and my family, and they destroyed it.
When the Vatican II comes through and the whole notion of liberalizing the church emerges, this group of sexologists or psychologists who are trained by them go into the clergy, goes into the Catholic Church to help decide who makes a good priest. They throw out all the Orthodox applicants, and people who kind of are unsure or who are very sure, who are rather homosexual or something, they get put through. And the folks who are not quite as stable in a way in terms of their orthodoxy, they're permitted into the clergy to a great extent. And several of our key dioceses, or the places where the clergy are trained, bring in pornography from the Institute for the Advanced Study of Human Sexuality to train priests the same way the medical profession has been trained. Desensitizing the priests on issues of homosexuality and promiscuity and bisexuality and everything else, using that pornography to desensitize them and condition them, and in many cases, to seduce them.
But the fallout has extended into mainstream Protestant churches as well, with one scandal after another, involving some of America's top evangelical leaders.
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
It just is a tragedy of the first order.
You know, I could give you a theological reason, Nancy. I think the enemy of our souls, Satan, assaults the church and assaults the truth.
As with Roman Catholicism, Protestant sex scandals all over the country often involve pedophile pastors and church leaders preying upon young children. While the hypocrisy involved is undeniable, can it be that this is the unavoidable conclusion of Kinsey's sexual revolution? A society so overwhelmed with temptation that even the most would-be pious members find it all but impossible to resist. And what will this mean for churches in America?
There's a whole issue of denial. We have turned our back on understanding that this is a significant, profound problem in the church. And I think that there needs to be an awareness and education, and I think that pastors need to address it from the pulpit.
Jeff Reinke is the marriage and family pastor of North Coast Calvary Chapel in Carlsbad, California. He believes that what we currently know about men struggling with sexual addiction in American churches is far worse than many Christian leaders are willing to admit.
I am grieved at the lack of moral outrage that there is lacking today in our culture, and particularly in the church, in the whole area of sexual perversion. I believe it is the Mount Whitney. I think addiction, and particularly sexual addiction, is the Mount Whitney of sin in the church today. If I could use a more effective metaphor, I really think it's like an iceberg, is we just barely see the tip of it. But underneath the surface, there is such deep denial, and that denial is led to personal destruction, I think, particularly with men.
This is nothing, right? This is nothing. Don't mean anything. This is nothing. I mean, I'm looking at a few pictures. Would you rather I'm actually with another girl? Like I mean, did I actually cheat on you?
You know, actually, I would prefer that my husband not do either one. Are you trying to give me an option? It's either a prostitute or the computer?
There's not a week that goes by in my own counseling practice that I am not counseling a couple, that I don't get a phone call or an email in regards to sexual addiction. I had a wife whose husband is a lawyer in the area, and she's filing for divorce. For the last 6 years, he's been caught in prostitution, in pornography, in striptease centers and so forth. And she asked me this question. She said, how is it that he could call himself a Christian for the last 5 years, that he's been struggling with this stuff? How can he call himself a Christian? Could you tell me that, Pastor?
When is it going to stop with you? I'm not covering for you anymore.
Dude, what's there to cover? There's nothing wrong with this. Did you look at it? There's nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, I did look at it, and so did your son.
Yes? So what?
What kind of a father have you become?
Now you're going to talk about me being a father?
It's going to stop, and it's going to stop now.
It already stopped.
That's what you said months ago. What kind of marriage is this? You know, it's one thing that you make me feel like I'm not even your wife, that I'm worth nothing, that you have to look at magazines and porn. What do you expect from me? I can't even look at you anymore. How do I explain this to your children? You know, you've got a problem, and now you've made it ours. Fix it.
With so much devastation affecting America at many levels, the question is, why hasn't something been done about Kinsey's dark legacy? The answers are complicated. Many brush off the continued influence of Kinsey and his disciples because they are told that things have gotten better because of them. It is often reported that sex crimes are diminishing in America, and that rape has supposedly declined by 85% since 1970. Law professor Anthony D'Amato published an essay in 2006 titled Porn Up, Rape Down, crediting the porn industry for this so-called reduction of rape. But leading members of law enforcement strongly disagree. Denver Police Lieutenant James D. Ponzi is a Regis University professor whose research on crime statistics has been presented at Harvard University and published in police journals across the country. Ponzi was quoted in Police Beat in May of 2005. He said, "In 1998, Shannon Schreiber was raped and murdered. The lawsuit her parents filed revealed the practice of downgrading sexual crimes. Departments cooked the books to lower crime rates." Lieutenant Ponzi got emails from different departments all over the country regarding statistics being altered in their cities. Ponzi said these lower rape statistics don't reflect what is truly happening in sex-related crimes. The reason for the deception is political pressure to lower crime rates, as partly exposed by U.S. News and World Report. In April of 2000, they wrote, "Facing political heat to cut crime in the city, investigators in the New York Sex Crime Unit sat on thousands of reports of rapes and other sexual assaults." Police Captain Rich Costello stated that the way crime was solved was with an eraser. In that same year, it was also reported that the FBI conducted a limited investigation and discovered that PPD had failed to report between 13,000 and 37,000 major crimes. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is a West Point psychology professor and Pulitzer Prize nominee. He is a renowned expert in human aggression and co-author of the book, Stop Teaching Our Kids to Kill. On crime statistics, he says, the downturn in violent crime in the U.S. in the 1990s is very deceptive. Violent crime is still about 5 times greater today per capita than it was in 1957. Grossman says the biggest factor for the lower crime rates is that we are lying about the data. One of the tactics used is to manipulate statistics in a way that gives a false impression to the public. For example, at the beginning of this film, we told you that some 58,200 children are abducted each year by non-family members. This report from the Department of Justice goes on to say that only 115 of these are stereotypical kidnappings. But they define stereotypical kidnapping to include children who are held for ransom or transported a distance of 50 or more miles. The report goes on to say that of the 58,200 children abducted, about half of the victims were sexually assaulted. While most people will be left thinking only about 115 kids, the reality is that at least 29,000 children are kidnapped and raped in America each year. The report also says that this is an underestimate. Researchers like Lieutenant James Ponzi, who we spoke with during our investigation, believe that the real number is much higher than anyone is able to document. As parents and guardians, we should consider again carefully the words of former prosecutor Ann Bremner.
And we also see in a lot of these kidnapping and death cases recently by sex offenders that your child can be lost in just an instant. So I think you have to be vigilant at all times. Be vigilant at all times.
Manipulation of truth and political pressure have continued to protect the influence of Alfred Kinsey and his followers for more than half a century. In the 1980s, the Reagan administration developed a commission to investigate the influence of pornography. The Department of Justice brought in Dr. Judith Reisman, who initially wanted to investigate Kinsey along with the images in Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustler. But just as the Reis Committee was opposed in the 1950s, so Dr. Reisman was shot down in the 1980s. She conducted her research at American University, but once she began, the university vehemently opposed any investigation into Kinsey, and she was forced to drop it.
I said, I'm not doing anything with human subjects. I'm just going to be researching his work, the things that he's already written. And they said, no, 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 you can't do that. So academic freedom was completely eliminated because the Kinsey Institute had some kind of power structure going there that caused them to be unable to allow me to pursue a United States Department of Justice grant from our country that would have allowed me, as an objective researcher, to look into the Kinsey